The caterhamracer.com Season 5 Championship is sponsored by Just Add Lightness, high-performance LED lights and accessories for the Caterham 7. By Design and Display Structures, immerse yourself in worlds beyond with bespoke projection screens. And by DPR Motorsport, your competitive advantage. With additional support from Darren Burke, Performance Driver Coach. Welcome back, everybody. It is round number 2 of the Season 5 of caterhamracer.com. We're back in action once again. We've had our little break once the real world of racing has got underway for the Caterham drivers. We're back in the virtual world tonight, and we're north of the border at in Scotland, and the only permanent race circuit in Scotland is the fantastic Knockhill circuit in Fife. It is maybe only be a short circuit, being just about 1.3 miles in length, but it certainly provides plenty of challenging twists and turns that will certainly test the drivers as much as possible. Apologies, we're a little bit later than going on. We had one or two little technical hiccups getting back into the swing of things, but we're back underway with about roughly 3 3/4 minutes to go in qualifying, because we've got a little bit of a brief time to cover that. But Scott Woodwist and Chris Hutchison back in the commentary box once again. Chris, we should also first of all say, before we get to the sim racing stuff very quickly, we've had a very busy several weeks. I mean, I've had the privilege of driving a Caterham for the first time at Bedford Autodrome. You've got back behind the wheel of the Caterham 420R and raced it for the first time at Donington. So in the real world, it's been quite a busy few weeks for both of us.
Yeah, definitely. It's been an exciting few weeks. Good evening, everybody. As Scott said, sorry, a little bit late this evening. But for most drivers, the world of motorsport is getting back underway for this season. And yeah, they had the induction of fire at Donington. It didn't start so well in qualifying, but as the weekend progressed, we moved further forward, and hopefully that'll continue next weekend at Knockhill. So this online event is a sort of preparation for that next event. We're just watching Jeff Newman here. He's also been busy out on track for the first time. He's one of our academy drivers this year, and he started his year very successfully with a win at Mallory Park. So congratulations to Jeff, as he's now trying to get to grips with the virtual Knockhill driving.
Yeah, congratulations to him. I was there at both Donington and also Mallory Park to see all the Caterham Championships kick off, and congratulations to all the race winners that we had. Some brilliant frenetic racing as always across both of those weekends. It was back to the virtual world where they're getting a bit of an online practice in before they make the trip up next weekend for real up to Knockhill, around the regular layout this time rather than the reverse layout which they drove on back in 2018. As we said, 1.3 miles in length. It's lots of twists and turns, lots of elevation changes and ups and downs. It's very much a roller coaster of a circuit despite its short length. And in terms of lap time, it's looking mighty competitive as always. You can see on the timing screen, timing tower on the left-hand side, out of the 17 cars who've had set times, 16 of them are within a second of each other. So impressive stuff so far. We're on board with former caterhamracer.com champion Steve McMaster as he makes his climb up the hill and towards the turn 1. You might have a quick bit of time for a lap here, because if you put on 3 in the deep end,
sure.
down towards turn 1. Quite a fantastic circuit. Let's take a ride.
Yeah, over Duffer's Dip, so that you disappear off the edge of the world and you're straight into trying to get the car settled for McIntyre's, which is a really tight right. Always tighter than you expect. You want to carry more speed. You see Steve just dipping over as we're heading towards the chicane, where you really have to thread the needle. You must miss those tyre stacks. In the virtual world, they are an absolute brick wall. So we might see that come into play, and now we're turning into Clark, a sort of 90-degree right, but it's really tricky to hit that apex. Steve's done a great job there. Try not to drift out too wide. We'll see plenty of dust being thrown up there as we head off down the railway straight. One of the best overtaking opportunities into a tight hairpin at Taylor's. Really difficult to pick your braking point, but you must do it, and then you must commit to it. Get that tucked into the apex and really try and maximise your exit as you're pulling uphill. So in the Academy car with not too much power under your right foot, you have to make sure you absolutely maximise that exit. So that was Steve putting in a lap time of a 1:59.5, so very, very competitive lap time. So anything under a minute is extremely good. Anything towards the 59.5 seconds is excellent. As you can see, David Rose just dipped under that at the 59.4, and he's currently sitting on provisional pole.
Yep, and there's not long left to go in the session. There's one car that's decided to call it a day for the qualifying session that we've got. It's another 2 15-minute races as we had at Donington Park. Here's Andy Parker, who has always been the bridesmaid very much, and never really the bride in terms of good luck in these Caterham races. He always gets into a decent position, but just isn't able to translate it into a strong result more than often. It's usually, for the most part, not really his fault. It's usually just circumstances going against him. He's currently 6th quickest I'll put him on the third row of the grid, but just looking at how competitive it is, it only takes a tenth of a second, particularly towards the bottom of the top 10, and you go from sort of 9th or 10th position to around about 6th or 7th. So it really has been one of the most competitive qualifying sessions, arguably, we've had. I think the circuit's played part of that, Chris, but we keep talking about the fact that the field keeps closing up in competitiveness as well, and that seems to play a factor because we've had that long gap between races between Donington Park and Knockhill. We've had drivers out racing for real as well, so there's been a lot of time for them to get some mileage in both in the real world and in the sim, and so these guys seem to be suitably prepared and even closer than they have been before, given the size of the circuit and the circumstances.
Yeah, they're definitely G'd up for this, ready to go. Been a sort of a 4-week gap since we've last been out on track, so yeah, it's always, as in the real world, it's always nice to get back out there and start throwing some lap times about. Yeah, the track definitely commits towards that. Being only a minute long, there's very little space for you to make up time.
Well, speaking of time, it has ticked down at the end of our 15-minute qualifying session. So let's give you the provisional grid for the first of two 15-minute races here for the second evening of racing for caterhamracer.com in Season 5. It's David Rowe, DPR team boss, who is currently quickest. He's quickest and will start from pole position alongside one of his long-time friends and team members, Christian Zaruta, on the front row of the grid. Richard Gallagher, always continuously improving. Third fastest for him, one of his best results from qualifying, alongside Will Rossetti, who was one of two race winners last time out at the Donington Park season opener. Row 3, Steve McMaster, who we rode on board with for a lap, and Andy Parker, who we mentioned will be looking for some good luck in this first race of the evening from 6th on the grid. Tom McEwing and John Lang, because Tom McEwing will be running in next year's academy. He was going to run this year, but decided to defer his entry to a year on, which means he's got some extra practice. John Lang has been quick ever since he joined in Season 4. Emma Gisellings from Belgium, and Chris Skillicorn, who I think he's not racing this year, but a few of his friends from academy are this year as well. But he's starting in 10th on the grid. Paul Donkin, former real-life Caterham racer, starts 11th. Jamie Peters-Ennis, good to have him back on the grid in 12th. Strong result so far to put him on row 6. Blair Mcconaughey, a bit lower than I suppose he would like to be, alongside Jason Knight. And then it's Steve Arnell and Jay Shepherd, who is racing in Mazda MX-5s these days. Jeff Newman, of course, who had his victory in real life, first time out in the Academy at Mallory Park, so congratulations to him. And Paul Hawker rounds out the 18-car grid to start off the first of two races tonight. Just whilst we're getting the about a minute and a half to go, we can give you a very quick rundown of the season overview and where we are in terms of points. So here's a quick reminder of the season. It mimics the real-life calendar. So we've had Donington already. We're going to Knockhill. Then we go to the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit, where we switch for 2 rounds to the Caterham 420R machines, then to Brands Hatch Indy. And then we go to a bit of a month's gap before we go to Croft, then Snetterton 300, and then we wrap up at Cadwell Park at the end for about early to mid-October. In the point standings coming is this weekend. Just to remind you, it was victories last time out for Will Rossetti and David Rowe, and that means that it's got Will Rossetti on 50 points, Tom McEwing on 48, Alistair Gregg on 46, Steve McMaster on 44, and David Rowe on 42. So pretty close in the mix as well, and that's roughly a direct reflection of what happened from that first race. So a little bit of a switch up in terms of the grid order, Chris, as we get almost set for the start, but this should be quite an interesting run, particularly with that downhill run into turn 1. That's going to catch up quite a few drivers, I think, particularly under braking. Yeah,
it's such a compressed track that really all the caution that we need for drivers from the first few corners, actually we need to see them put that into practice all the way through. Dave Rowe, obviously starting from pole, is the opportune moment and really wants to stay there. We've seen, Richard Gallagher's been in his red and yellow car there. You can see his new livery applied this time out, but he put it on pole last time and had some really good results. So we say he's an improvement, but I think he's actually already there, but we just need to see them get to the end of the race more often, don't we? But David Rowe had a really good practice, so I'm going to put the win in his hands for this first race.
Let's see if he can translate pole into a win. We're all set for race number 1 of season 5 of round 2 of caterhamracer.com. All ready to get underway at Knockhill. It's David Rowe, Christian Zaruta on the front row of the grid. We're underway. Lights are out. It's a relatively clean start from everyone involved as they head down towards the drop at Duffus Dip, and then Leslie's for the first time, and it's Rowe who's got the inside line. Zaruta will slot in for second place. They tumble down the hill. For third and fourth, it's Rossetti, who's got ahead of Gallagher off the start, so he's managed to beat him away as they head through McIntyre's and through Butcher's, through the chicane for the first time. So John Lang's had a fairly strong start. We're going to get a first proper representation of where they are when they come through the splits and up at the end of the first lap, but through the chicane one after the other. I think at a certain camera angle you can get quite a sight as they hop over the curbs one after the other, line astern. A little bit of battling in the background there. We see for 5th and 6th positions. They make their way out of Clark Corner and through the long left-hander of Railway Bend. It's not really a corner, it's a slightly curved straight and up towards the Taylor's hairpin. This will be the scene of many braking duels and overtaking opportunities. Christian Cerruto already taken a slightly wider line for the undercut on the exit. A few more passing opportunities here, and someone's steaming down the inside already. So the fireworks have begun further down in the pack, but down the pit straight to end lap number 1 of racing tonight, and it's side by side already for the lead. It's Rowan in the lead with Christian Cerruto in second. It's Will Rossetti third, and it's Gallagher fourth. Andy Parker's up to fifth ahead of Tom McEwing in sixth place. 7th place now for Steve McMaster, 8th for Emma Giselic, 9th for John Lang, and a strong start up a couple of spots already from 12th on the grid. Chris up for Jamie Peters-Ennis. He's kept his nose clean after a really strong initial showing at Donington Park, continuing on that good form and already up into the top 10 places on lap 2.
Yeah, don't forget this is only the top 18 drivers on the service. There are another 20 odd drivers racing on Grid B this evening, so this is definitely the cream of the crop. We see Christian right on the back of David Rowe there. That's David protecting his inside line there. Yeah, now turn 1 we saw the dive bomb. Luckily everyone got out the way of that on this first lap, so no particular catastrophe. Will Rossetti also absolutely on it, really good on the brakes there, really close to Christian Cerruto. So you can see how much of an important part of the track this chicane, the hairpin is to really generate your lap time, but also offers an overtaking opportunity, as Christian again has to go to the outside of turn 1.
Key part is to get as much traction as possible off the hairpin, so you can make a big dive up the inside line, but if you shoot too deep, it's going to cause you to really lose traction and speed on the exit, so you've got to try and pick your line very carefully if you're going to make a pass, to try and sweep back to the racing line as quickly as possible to make sure that the cars behind don't take advantage. It'll run wide there for Christian Cerruto. We hop over the chicane for the third time. It's a brilliant shot, one after the other. There's a couple of cars off in the background. One, I think, is Chris Skillicorn. The other one's Jay Shepherd. They're the two tumbling down the timing screen. They both get away in tandem, so whatever happened between the pair of them has pretty much been settled immediately. But already we're seeing a bit of a train forming here between the top 7, Chris. We see now David Rose leading the group with Cerruto, Rossetti, Gallagher, Park and McEwing and McMaster in the tow. But this is typical Caterham racing here, as we see there goes up the inside for second goes Rossetti, more battling behind them, but this is going to be a scrap for second place out of the hairpin and now up the straight towards Duffers Dip now for the 4th time. And this will now see Rossetti on the inside line, and really in this situation Christian Cerruto hasn't really got a response. All he can do is try and go deep around the outside as they almost rub wheels under brakes into Duffers Dip, but Cerruto sees it coming. He sees Rossetti run wide and goes round the outside at Leslie's. I think he either saw that coming or set him up absolutely perfectly, and Rossetti didn't really appreciate being passed like that, and he gave him a little bump in the rear there for good measure, and there's more contact behind. That was Gallagher being a little bit too ambitious into Butchers. Both he and Rossetti have exited stage left and right respectively, and unfortunately that was a bit of a catalyst, but that all started way back at the hairpin, Chris, at Taylor's, and that was Rossetti making a move up the inside line. Rossetti seemed to just outbrake himself a little bit and just didn't get his run through Duffers Dip correct, and that just set off a chain reaction. Yeah,
Christian got the turn 1 absolutely right, did the undercut, and Rossetti actually slid off wide, so he got to the understeer, carried a few 2-mile-an-hour extra through the turn 1, and it just made him offline. And unfortunately, once you're offline, you're off pace, you're out of the queue, and then it was all tricky from then on. And he just clipped the back of Christian as he was going through the right-hander again, just all because the car's unsettled and it's not doing, because of all the gradient, it's not doing what you want it to do. Yeah, and then obviously Richard Gallagher tried to come alongside, and both cars unsettled themselves and pinged themselves stage left and stage right. But that all left David Rowe to sort of pull away to a nice little comfortable gap at the moment, I'd say. Christian has definitely got the pace though to make a nuisance of himself, and as we saw in the early parts of the lap, you can get caught up beside someone else's mistake, which is actually going to cost you time, and then the gaps in the train are going to start forming. But it's looking fairly comfortable at the moment for David, with still 10 minutes to go though.
I was going to say, it's one of those situations where David Rowe was quite literally laughing in his seat watching that happen behind him, but he's got a gap of 2.1 seconds to Christian Cerruto. We'll whisper this carefully. Andy Parker's in 3rd place, but hopefully he'll stay there to get a good result, because he has been the bearer of bad luck sometimes. This is Jamie Peters-Ennis having a bit of a lock-up into the Taylor's hairpin. He's being chased down by Paul Donkin in a scrap over 8th and 9th position. And Jeff Newman, we should say, from towards the back of the grid, has managed about, 17th on the grid, up to P10 already. So a nice strong start for already one of our 2 race winners in Caterham Academy this season. But he is starting to be closed down pretty quickly by Blair Mcconaughey and Steve Arnell and Joseph Knight. As for the 2 cars that had the mishaps earlier on, Richard Gallagher and Will Rossetti have carried on, but they're all the way back down in 15th and 16th respectively, so they're quite out of contention for victory in this first race. They'll have to try and regather themselves up a little bit to try and respond in race 2 and make up some positions in the early laps, but that really wasn't the kind of the race didn't really quite go to plan for them on that occasion. David Rowe then is trying to get on with this, but so is Christian Zeruta, because the gap was 2.1 seconds, but ever so slightly, Chris, he's managed to edge that down to 1.9. And then we look at the gap between second and third between Christian Zeruta and Andy Parker, and if anything, that's kind of stabilising too. So pace-wise, the top three all seem to be fairly evenly matched. It kind of has to relies on what fourth and fifth backwards are going to do, if they've got a chance to catch up, or they're going to stabilise and also sit where they're going to be for quite a while back, as Zeruta puts in the fastest lap of the race.
Yeah, like, it's so easy to make that mistake. You can see that the pace is very slightly above what it would be on qualifying, but again, you are at the moment trying to gain points onto your championship score. So if you do have an accident like we've already seen, it is affecting not only this race but the following one as well, because you start the second race wherever you finish this first one. So if you happen to be at the back, that's where you're going to start this next one. So McMaster definitely looks like he's trying to put the moves on, but these gaps are sort of solidifying themselves sort of at that kind of second-ish mark. We know that the toe starts kicking in at around half a second, so at the moment, they're just turning through laps, trying to make sure they maintain the gap behind them, as well as trying to keep up with the person in front. And that's keeping them all about that second gap right now. But whether we see some more action, again, it'll just depend on whether someone makes that little mistake, which then bunches everyone up into a little compressed pack again.
On a circuit with so many elevation changes and sweeping corners, that is easier than it might think. It looks like quite a daunting circuit, and it is, but some people might look at it and think 1.3 miles, what can go wrong in 1.3 miles? But then try asking drivers that have raced here before and had mishaps in the past. So this is really one of those circuits where it might look fairly simple on paper, but then once you drive it, you find out it's more than just a bit of a pointy curved triangle. It's got a bit more about it, as we see Rossetti having a scrap here with another one of the drivers that's recovering, Jay Shepherd, who is currently spending his days racing in MX-5s, though he probably didn't get taught that. That's more TVR Tuscan style racing as he went through the left-hander at Leslie's down towards McIntyre's, getting very sideways on the exit. Meanwhile, Paul Donkins had a mistake. Now, last time we saw him, he was right behind Jamie Peters-Ennis. Now, Jamie's still 8th, but the telltale sign is that Paul Donkins is the one that's dropped behind. So I suspect, Chris, it's more nothing really that Jamie's done, but more Paul was a bit too ambitious trying to chase down Jamie, and as a result, he came off worse for wear.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. I saw him actually having to put on the brakes. I wonder whether he got also a cut penalty as part of that misdemeanour. Maybe he cut across the sort of Duffer's Dip escape route and had to do a slowdown. McMaster's definitely the one looking like he's putting that pressure on Tom McEwing now. Tom McEwing is one of our future drivers, but has been on the service for with us since the start, and has actually become one of our most consistent pedallers. So McMaster's going to have his work cut out, but we'll certainly look how this develops, especially as he's now within that half second. He seems threading that needle through the chicane. It's really uncomfortable to watch him go over those curves. But yeah, McMaster definitely putting on what looks like the closest battle that we've got so far.
To the right-hander at Clark Curve, the gap is now under half a second, that magical 0.5 seconds that we talk about to make sure he gets a little bit of a toe. And now they head down towards Taylor's here. The gap, as you mentioned in the lead, as David Rose set the new fastest lap of the race last time by, has gone up again. It was about 1.7, but David Rose found a bit more pace in the second half of the race and has managed to pull the gap back out to over 2 seconds. Between Zeruta and Parker, though, there's a bit of a reduction there, and it's been a string of fastest laps because Christian Zeruta sets the fastest lap of the race and then immediately gets beaten by Andy Parker. So, again, whisper it carefully, Andy Parker, the fastest man on track right now, and currently sat in 3rd, so he's in a good position here, and dare we even say it, he's got decent enough pace to potentially get onto the back of Christian Zeruta and start causing some troubles with about 5.5 minutes left. I'm
not possibly going to comment on that until later in the race, but I don't want to be part of that. But yeah, we're seeing some great battles further back down as well. I can see McMaster still there, tucking away, being patient though, going to look for his opportunity rather than just go for a straight up dive bomb. Emil Jaselink has been quietly getting on with his race, and he's up in 6th place, just a little bit trailing off the McMaster train there, but still well within that, with John Lang sort of pestering him in our sort of purpley blue car, and yeah, all going well. Peters-Ennis now kind of in no man's land, but has maintained his 8th place, which is great from his starting position in 12th. Blair Mcconaughey, maybe not such a good start to his race, but he's now tight with Steve Arnell just behind him, so that makes up our top 10.
Christian Zeruta responded on that lap. He set a personal best of a 59.6, and not only did he bring the gap down to about 1.6 seconds, but he's also put the gap out between himself and Parker to about 1.4 now. So talk about possibly leaving it late here, but he has got roughly about a third of the race still to go, and Christian now starting to think that he's got a little bit left in the tank here in this second place machine. Come through the long left-hander railway bend, flat out on the run towards this big braking zone of Taylor. There's a big stop on the brakes. It's very easy to lock the inside front if you stand on the pedal hard enough. Four-place battle looking pretty intriguing here. Tom McEwen here, as we say, has been learning his craft on the server here. Isn't going to race in the academy until next year, and he's certainly trying to do what he can in terms of develop his racecraft a little bit against Steve McMaster. Of course, he's already been a champion in one of these caterhamracer.com events already, along with Jarrett Cherney. Back in, I think it was season 2, I think it was, when it was a championship. Paul Donkin, meanwhile, has gone into the pit lane, so whatever an issue it was that saw him spin or have a problem and drop down to 13th has now been unfortunately severe enough to put him out of the race, it seems, or at least a few laps down. This is the closest battle we've got on track by the looks of it. This is between Steve Arnell and Blair Mcconaughey, two drivers who are normally up there around towards the front, but by a bit of a quiet race, they're just having a scrap amongst themselves to keep them entertained, and that's not going to help Blair Mcconaughey on his home circuit here. He's got Steve Arnell right underneath his rear roll cage, and I think he's probably starting to feel a bit of the pressure.
Yeah, definitely. Look, Steve's in perfect position here, so I'm sure McConaughey will defend that inside line, forces Steve out to the outside, as he duly does. And outside of this corner is not an easy place to overtake at, so normally you're looking for the undercut. So again, will Blair protect for that undercut by keeping it nice and tight? He does. Steve's getting a good run out the corner though, so he's still in the prime position to make a move up into Duffers on this first lap. Let's go on board with him as he has to move to the outside again. So Blair doing all the right things about positioning his car, but you can see that Steve has got a run going into turn 1, so he's in as good a position as he can be, but it looks like Blair's got that still just about. Steve's running out a little bit wide, so he had to back out of it. Always trying to be mindful of Richard Gallagher's just behind him, and we know how fast he is.
I think that was more a case of Blair looking across thinking, where have you come from? He didn't really expect it, and I suspect David Rowe might be saying exactly the same thing, because the gap has now come rapidly right all the way down to 1.1 seconds, and also talking of which, look at the scrap for third, because Andy Parker, I think we did speak to, so he's under threat from Tom McEwen, with Steve McMaster waiting in the wings. They turn their way through Taylor's now, third, fourth and fifth all together. Emil Jaselink is only half a second ahead of John Lang now, and he's now within the slipstream range. I mean, look with the overhead shot from Tom McEwen, he gets right underneath the roll cage, he leaves it to the last possible moment to lose to the outside line. Ooh, Andy Parker's allowed to do that. He's allowed to go back towards the racing line, but he has to give him room as he comes through the right-hander at Duffers Tip, then through Leslie's at the bottom of the hill. That was a little bit, it was just within what was acceptable there for Andy Parker. No. He put the defence on him, but it was just about enough room that you're allowed to do. If it's enough, we have to squeeze them onto the grass. That's where it gets a bit naughty. But until that was kind of, I'd say, just about perfectly defended there from Andy for the time being. Absolutely
perfectly, exactly what you want to do as a driver there. He was still ahead, so he was the car with the momentum. So close going through Clark there that time. But yeah, you can move back to the racing line. He was the car ahead. McEwen was trying to get past him. He left him the room, so that's exactly what you want to do. McEwen was absolutely looking for any chance he could to go up the inside, but you can see that for this track especially, defence up the inside is really what you want to do. So we'll see Andrew pulling over to the right hand side of the track as we go up the hill. But now it looks like McEwen, because he's been so closely back, he's got to run. McMaster's going to get a run onto him in turn 1.
Also, I think we're on to the last lap of the race, and the lead gap is less than a second now. So unless Rowe makes a big mistake, touch wood, I think he might just have this. But Zaruta's going to keep on pushing him all the way to the flag. So you've got two crucial battles here to keep on watching on. In fact, actually it's 3, because I'm keeping an eye also on Jaselink versus Lang, and that's over 6th and 7th place. So at the moment, the lead, 3rd place, and 6th are all under threat here, with Rob Rossetti pops in a qualifying style 59.4 to take the fastest lap of the race. 20 seconds left to go on the clock, and you don't really know where to look. There's battles on for first, battles on for third, riding wide on the exit. There goes all 3 of the cars involved in the scrap for the final podium place. But up towards the hairpin for what should be the last time. Christian Zaruta getting as close as he dares, goes a little bit later, tries for the undercut on the exit to square the corner off on the run towards the checkered flag. The timer ticks to 0. The checkered flag will be out this time. It is going to be a typical case for sprint, and Zaruta gets to run off the final corner. It's going to be a side-by-side finish to the line. Zaruta will get his nose in front, will he? It's going to be close to the line, and Zaruta just lost out. I didn't have to see the timing at the end of it, but that was so close, and Zaruta got such a run off the final corner, he almost snatched the lead. It was a typical Caterham photo finish. Andy Parker does make it to 3rd on the line from Tom McEwen and Steve McMaster. It was also a photo finish between John Lang and Emil Jaselink, and John Lang just pipped the Belgian at the line for 6th. Jamie Peters-Ennis gets 8th, Blair Mcconaughey 9th, and Richard Gallagher 10th. But goodness me, that was quite an extreme finish, and not one I saw being that close towards the flag, Chris. That caught me off guard.
Yeah, absolutely. It was. They had a very sort of genteel middle of that race, didn't they? They looked like they were out for a Sunday drive, and then suddenly decided in the last 3 minutes that they ought to get on with it. What a finish there, Christian. It says in the results here that Christian did actually finish ahead, so maybe that is now confirmed. That Christian did finish ahead of David Rowe in the result.
There it is. The timing screen doesn't lie. So Christian Tsuruta, for his final effort there, did make it stick, and he managed to get the victory by the fairly sizable margin of 5/1000ths of a second, which I think is quite frankly, I think unless you can confirm otherwise, Chris, I think that is officially possibly our closest ever finish that we've had in caterhamracer.com. 5/1000ths of a second is pretty astonishing, and the way he did it was pretty incredible too. And I think I can see him in the background there. That's Steve McMaster doing donuts, I think. But if he's not down there, Christian Tsuruta should be as well, because that was quite a drive. David Rowe then, after doing everything right until right at the flag, loses out by 5/1000ths of a second. So that's the paradox of that final finish to the race. Andy Parker does finally get some good luck and finishes third in that first race, when Tom McEwing and then Steve McMaster. But top five covered by less than 4 seconds, which is pretty interesting. Sixth goes to John Lang, as he just pipped him by roughly about a quarter of a tenth of a second between himself and Emma Gisellings. But it's 8th for Jamie Peters-Ennis, 9th for Blair Mcconaughey, 10th for Richard Gallagher, which is a bit disappointing for him after he had the contact with Roy Rossetti early on, but he managed to charge back up to 10th. And Steve Arnell and Jeff Newman, who finished starting, I think it was 17th on the grid, finished 12th. Jay Shepherd also recovered after his contact with Chris Skillicorn. Roy Rossetti a lowly 15th after he was up towards the front in the early stages. Then we had Paul Hawker, Jason Knight and Paul Donkin, who pulled in after he was battling with Jamie Peters-Ennis early on for what was going to be 8th position. But we've still got one race to go, and I'm almost breathless already. That was a pretty intense battle, and one in which I think David Rowe will probably want revenge on this one, given the fact that he just lost out by that minuscule margin and had it all there until right just at the line. I suspect that he'll want to get his own back on this one, and it should be quite a dogfight between the two of them at the front of the field for this second race victory. It
absolutely would be. I wish I was a fly on the wall in the race grid chats going on at the moment, because you can be absolutely sure that Christian is not letting David know anything less than everything about that last corner. Interesting. I wonder, sometimes it's easy to buzz an engine. I wonder whether David was suffering a little bit from a bit of engine weakness at the end of that race. We saw in a previous practice race that he actually got a box of neutrals, because you're definitely pushing these cars to the absolute maximum. But yeah, I look forward to their talk after the race, and yeah, we've got a whole new race to go. I said I picked David for my win, and I was looking really good on that until 3 minutes to go, wasn't I?
You two are going to have words at Knockhill, I think, after that one, or at least have some words afterwards ahead of Knockhill to see, because I think Christian's route to spoiled you bet in some cases. Yeah. So the grid, of course, is going to form up for race number 2. Of course, it's a direct reflection of the result from race number 1. So wherever you finish is where you start. So Christian's route, rather than starting on what with the outside of the front row of the grid, now gets pole position on the inside, which is certainly going to possibly help him if he gets a good start to hold on to the position down towards Duffer's Dip for the first time. Now, drivers we should look out for: Andy Parker, of course, starting third on the grid and might get a good start from the inside here. Provided Christian Tsuruta doesn't chop him off, if he gets a good start, he may well be in a position to get quite a rocket-propelled getaway and try and get himself level with both Rowe and Tsuruta. Whether he chooses to stay level with both of them to make it 3 wide his Duffer's Dip, which is either a brave or a stupid move, or both, will have to remain to be seen. But other drivers he should be making moves up there include, I think, Tom McEwing could be a dark horse in 4th position. And also we have to look out, I think, for the cars that are back on row 5. You have to look for both Blair Mcconaughey and Richard Gallagher. Blair made steady progress up there to get into the top 10, as did Richard Gallagher after his spin. So he was arguably one of the quickest guys out there making the progress that he did. So I think maybe while the front row men will be favourites of victory, behind him on the podium, there's actually a few cars behind the second row that might well have designs here and a very good chance of taking it from them.
Yeah, definitely. And also, no one hit the tyre stack in that first race, which actually I wouldn't have placed a bet on. So maybe they're going to make good on that in this race too. And if that's someone near the front, then someone right at the back could win this, given that the seas can part and they can make a run all the way through the carnage. So yeah, a whole field of people within 1 second. Of course, anyone is capable of winning this as the lights come up for race 2.
So, the first race was 5/1000ths of a second. Are we going to get a finish as close as that, or is somebody going to run away with it? It is race 2 of the evening here at Knockhill. It's now going to be the grudge match, round number 2 between Christian Zaruta and David Rowe. Who's going to win the sprint off the line? Well, it looks fairly even as they get away for race number 2. Also a strong start for the 4th row of the grid from both Emil Jasenics and Jamie Peters-Ennis. They all squirm away down towards Duffus Dip for the first time, and they look, dare I say it, fairly civilised. But it's David Rowe who's got the jump this time, so he immediately gets his revenge on Zaruta in towards McIntyre's for the first time. There's what was I saying? They're not all through cleaning because 2 cars have already hit trouble, and one of them is Richard Gallagher again. So after he made the contact with Will Rossetti, he's off the road and back down to 17th. The other car that seems to be involved is also Steve Arnell, and they were roughly fairly close to each other on the grid anyway. So whether those two came together, or it was just a unfortunate coincidence rather that they made contact, remains to be seen. Jason Knight also looks though he was involved in that too. But those who are clean and up at the front of the field make their way down towards Taylor's for the first time. And Tom McEwing is picking up where he left off. He's on the back of Andy Parker. Make that alongside him now into Taylor's hairpin. We saw the power of the run up the hill that Christian Zaruta got right at the end of race 1. Let's see if that effect can take hold here as they come across the end of lap number 1. And already you can see Christian Zaruta, he's not hanging around here. He's certainly letting David Rowe know that I beat you right out the line for race 1. Now I'm coming for you for the race 2, and I'm right underneath you already at the start of the second lap as they come down the hill towards McIntyre's.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be keen not to let it could be as late in the race as the last time, although he'd still take that. But I imagine he just wants to sit on his gearbox for a little bit now, build up that gap to the 3rd place as they're battling. Tom McEwing actually did make it through coming up into Clark Corner from the last lap, and actually Parker got a run back up the inside of him into the hairpin. So McEwing did make it ahead, but Parker's managed to retain his 3rd place overall the lap. And just seeing, battles continuing in the midfield as everything settles down. But again, no one's hit the tyre stat that I've seen so far. So how much do I know about that? Nothing.
You really are tempting fate with that, aren't you? You put the tyre stack every time. We'll have to wait and see if anyone does it. If that actually comes true, I bet you that's some kind of effect that warns people off it. Meanwhile, just watching this scrap here, 7th place for Steve McMaster, who's behind Jamie Peters-Ennis. We should mention a cracking start for him in these first couple of laps. Picked his way into 6th position. And Jamie's one of those drivers where, I mean this in a nice possible way, he's not a spectacular driver, but he's consistent. He's able to pick his way through the pack and keep those out of trouble and keep himself moving up the order. He's already up into P6 at the end of the second lap, and if he keeps up this rate and keeps on the tail of John Lang, I have to say, I don't think a top 5's out of the cards if he keeps up this rate, but it also depends as well, Chris, if he can keep that man Steve McMaster behind as they hop over the chicane for the 3rd time. Yeah,
absolutely, and as you said, he has come good very quickly. It takes a little while to get used to it, and the Academy car specialist Tom McEwing's off wide there, so John Lang's going to come into play with that one, and you can see here that still we've got McMaster right on the tail of Jamie. So yeah, he absolutely has become a really consistent, solid driver, so good to see, and yeah, to be up in 6th place in only your 2nd race weekend with us is a great position to be in. Ooh, as we see, that looks like Jay Shepherd locked up.
That's Jay Shepherd, I think, just arriving at the hairpin. I think we need to remind him you're not in a Mazda MX-5 or a TBR Tuscan, you're in a Caterham, so he needs to remember that next time. Now, what's happened here then? Because at the front of the field, Christian Zaruta, well, I can tell you what's happened. Zaruta now leads the way. He's got past David Rowe, and also in the mix now is that man Andy Parker in 3rd place. So he can get himself in contention for, dare I say, it's a race victory. We also talk very carefully about Andrew Parker, of course, because whenever we talk about him in a good light, usually, it doesn't really pay off and he makes a mistake. But 4th and 5th position are also quite in close attention. John Lang having one of his best nights so far in 4th, and Tom McEwing in 5th position. Jamie Peters-Ennis is 6th from Steve McMaster 7th, and it's Emil Jasenics, Will Rossetti's up to 9th from what was at roughly 15th on the grid. So 6 places made up for Will, and then it's 10th place for Blair Mcconaughey. So they come down the back straight, and Andy Parker's going for 2nd place here. He's making a move, or trying to put David Rowe off here and under pressure into Taylor's hairpin. Another small lock-up from Jamie Peters-Ennis. There's the 2nd stack forming up, and Jay Shepherd's had it again up at the hairpin. He's now trying to force his way up the inside of Richard Gallagher. He's not shy of making an error. You can see he's got plenty of experience racing some rather fast cars, and therefore he's trying to translate that into sim racing as John Lang had to really stand on the anchors there, not to hit the back of Andy Parker. As well, Rossetti sets the fastest lap of the race. Behind them, Jamie Peters-Ennis goes grass tracky on the exit of Duffus Dip, and he now loses 1, 2, 3 spots. Make that almost 4 as Blair Mcconaughey has a look up the inside into Butchers, and Jamie Peters-Ennis, rather than try and fight, he just lets him through, which is the smart driving to do, I think, rather than try and fight it too much and lose time and potentially cause an accident between the two of them. He thought, no, I'm trying to recover here. He's much faster. Let him through, and he might come back towards me in the second half of the race. And there was contact there. That was Rossetti that went around, and also I think he got tagged by Jasenics as well. At least it was Rossetti tagging the Belgian that got them round at Clark Curve. So Space of 3 laps here is now going up the inside goes John Lang and Tom McEwen. They're all trying to get it to third place as well. McMaster's in the mix there on his own. All of a sudden, Chris, where it's come from, it just kicked off in 2 laps, which is incredible. There's so much going on, you can hardly keep up.
Well, yeah, race 1, you have a lot more to lose because obviously it affects race 2 as well. In race 2, you've got slightly less to lose, maybe some penalties. We did see some penalties last time out for Jay Shepherd on one of his overtaking manoeuvres, and I'm wondering whether people will take a little bit of exception on those 2 dive bombs there, which is a little bit extreme as Andrew Parker goes off wide there, but still manages to keep ahead of John Lang. I'm not sure how John didn't get through on the last lap, but Andrew's clearly got some pace coming out of Clark because he was able to keep away. But this is definitely a really nice developing battle here, and Tom McEwen doesn't look like he's very happy to be at the back of that group, does he?
I think he'll certainly prefer if he's in front of it and pulling away, but whether he can make it up further than 5th at the moment, I'll have to keep watching this battle. At the moment, Christian Zeruto, who's now got himself into the lead, he's 1.2 seconds to the good as McEwen goes steeping down the outside. They really are trying these big braking moves into Taylor's hair, but they're not afraid to stand on the anchors at the last possible moment. Even though there's floods of white tyre smoke coming off the front of these cars as they make the big stop towards Taylor's. Change of position there between McEwen and Lang. McEwen with a nice neat run up the hill that gets him into 4th place by the time they turn into Duffus. And also on the pace now is Steve McMaster in 6th position because he's now got himself on the fringe of the top 5 behind John Lang. Rest of the top 10 is Blair Mcconaughey 7th, ahead of Jamie Peterson is 8th, then Paul Donkin and Jay Shepherd, who I'm quite astonished that Jay Shepherd, giving all his antics in the first half of the race, Chris, is still in 10th position, making 9th. He's just got past Paul Donkin. But he's quite a flamboyant driver, is Jay Shepherd in one of these Caterhams, but you can't deny his speed either. He certainly knows when he's stopped sliding around, he's actually quite a rapid driver in the sim when he is able to keep pointing in a straight line without being sideways.
Absolutely, single lap pace, I don't think you can question it. He's been regularly in sort of the top half of qualifying and offline especially, and also most of the time does keep it going quite nicely, but as you said, we certainly on the onboard shots that we've seen, it's rare that he's not locked up or sideways, isn't it? So flamboyant is an extremely good description. He's had a little bit of timing line glitch there. They put David Rowe temporarily behind Andrew Parker, and I thought Andrew had made a god move, but hadn't. Andrew Parker, in fact, is coming under pressure from Tom McEwen, who's got up the inside of Clark there, not Clark, McIntyre, and has made that stick, although John Lang's also sticking his oar in, and Steve McMaster, who by his own admission doesn't really like the Academy car, he prefers the 420, but he is sitting there waiting to pick up the pieces. I'm sure he's licking his chops.
Well, he's clearly talking rubbish because he's sitting up there in 6th position and keeping in the mix down for the final podium place. This is the biggest battle on track at the moment, as we see. Jay Shepherd's dropped down to 11th.
He's on one of the snakes rather than one of the ladders, isn't he?
It's like he's probably caught a curb somewhere. I just thought put the power down a bit too quickly. This is the big battle at the front though for 3rd place, the final podium spot. Tom McEwen has it, but make no mistake, John Lang, Andy Parker and Steve McMaster all want it, and they're all going for it now as we go on board with John Lang. That's the view he's got, chasing the black Caterham with the sort of green and white graphics and the black roll cage. As you see Tom McEwen just pitching the car in sideways through Duffus Dip and down the hill as they tumble their way through. You've got to imagine, Chris, of course, in next weekend, the real Academy drivers have to do this for real. And if you thought that their sort of eyes were on stalks trying to go through Gerrard's for the first time up towards the hairpin, imagine what they're going to be like when they go through Duffus Dip for the first time. They must be absolutely terrified. Yeah,
it's really like driving off the end of the world. It just the track just goes away from you. You've got to hit sort of an apex that just sits over the sky basically, and off you go down and hope that you gain some grip by the time you reach that curb on the left hand side. A bit like Paddock Hill Bend in that respect kind of thing, so good practice for later in the year. And then in the chicane as well, when you're going up the hill towards that, hopefully there won't be a tyre stack there in real life, but as you're going uphill there, all you can see is sky. You can't see the track itself, so yeah, definitely an induction of fire for the Academy coming into this as their 2nd race of the year.
Anthony Parker's playing the role of daredevil here because he went steaming down the outside into Taylor's hairpin. Now he's all over the back of John Lang to try and reclaim 4th position, and he's going for it. Big dive up the inside into McIntyre, and that was a sweetly taken move there from Andy Parker. You can tell the tuition from Darren Burke's paying off, and immediately he was straight to the inside line to cut off any avenue that John Lang had to try and retaliate. So really is getting his elbows out here and not afraid to do so as they come up towards Clark Curve with about 5.25 minutes to go. Small puff of tyre smoke as Parker locks up, turning in through the right-hander, and still under threat from John Lang and Steve McMaster, who's in the mix as well. I should have mentioned also, just I was keeping tabs on lap times in the background, is that David Rowe the last couple of laps, he has been a little bit quicker than Christian Zeruta the last couple of times around. Although on this lap, he has managed to drop a couple of tenths back, and the gap is now about 1.4 seconds, when it was around about 1.1 and 1.2 about a lap or two ago. So trying to pick up the pace, and last time I crossed the line, it was Zeruta, again, about a tenth and a half better. So Rowe's trying to hold on. Now then, another place could be lost here for John Lang, as up the inside slides Steve McMaster. And John Lang has to capitulate, and he's back down to 6th position as he drops outside the top 5. So marching towards the back of the top 10 is John Lang, but so far at the moment it seems both Parker and McMaster, while we said that McMaster isn't quite the biggest fan of the Academy car, he certainly is appreciating it right now, isn't he?
Yeah, definitely. He's definitely putting on a good show, isn't he? And again, his consistency as John Lang looks up the inside here. He's actually made a good overlap, but doesn't quite carry the speed. It's quite, you have to knock off the speed to sort of get around that bend. So McMaster just had a little bit more. He didn't have such an acute angle to take, so he could carry a few miles an hour more. But the attack is still there. John Lang's now looking around the outside of the hairpin as McMaster defends the inside. But it does look like overall McMaster's won this battle for this lap. But every lap is a different affair, isn't it? So who knows what's going to happen next time out.
Look behind, because there's a good battle going on also, but for 7th place, Blair McConaughey's actually coming under threat now from Jamie Peters-Ennis, and Blair originally managed to get himself in front several laps ago, but looks like Jamie's going to try and line him up here. Which way is he going to go? He thought about the dummy there, switches the inside last minute into Duffers, but didn't quite make it stick. He's now trying to throw the switch back as he goes through. That leads up towards McIntyre's for 7th, and of course this is him up against a man who in real life has come up twice a couple of times for the championship against Tom Willis in Academy and then Road Sports. Certainly in 270 he's trying to enjoy the uprated suspension and go for 3rd time lucky. But of course, whilst he's been doing that, he's also been honing his skills in these caterhamracer.com cars, and certainly showing his skill. Just coming through the right-hander there of Clark Curve. A lot of cars running wide on the exits. They come through to the railway bend. 3 minutes to go on the clock as it ticks down now, so 3 minutes left at roughly around about, I'd say, these have just about gone through, across the line any seconds. Yeah, they've gone through now, so I'd say roughly we've got about 3 laps to go, I'd say, on this one. The gap is between the top two, 1.6, as David Rowe's dipped into the 1 minutes now, whereas Christian Zeruta is consistently lapping the 59. So it looks as though at the moment, touch wood, that Christian Zeruta seems to have this now under control, and he's not really having to do as much pursuing as he did before. As up the inside goes Jamie Peters-Ennis with a big move into McIntyre's. Can he get that one stick? He goes a little wide on the exit, but he has defended it. Nice move. So not bad for someone who's only in his 2nd race in the top group. He's certainly learning pretty quickly and passing someone who's vastly experienced in the real catering world. Hats off to him, although I fear I've spoken too soon, because I just look back up at the screen and sadly Jamie Peters-Ennis has rocked over the chicane too much and he's dropped all the way back down to 10th position. I'll stop talking.
He
now.
just took slightly too tight a line through the second part of the chicane, which drops you off the edge of the curbing on the left-hand side as you're coming out of the chicane, and unfortunately it's very slippy on that grass, and it's very often that we see cars then spin to the inside, which is exactly what Jamie demonstrated perfectly there. As we got, that's Chris Killicorn going straight on with a lock-up into the hairpin.
I wondered where he was off to, because I think if the track turns right, not left, Chris, and he's gone straight off into the gravel, so that's him down into 15th position. Last time I saw a driver do that was Matt Neal back in 1998 in the wet in the British Touring Car Championship, but that didn't end pretty for his Nissan Primera either. Now through the chicane now with 1 minute 25 to go, and Andy Parker still chasing Tom McEwing as hard as he can now for that final podium spot. He managed to pick up a 3rd in race 1. Tom McEwing will deal have to pick up a podium visit of his own for race number 2 if he can. Here's Paul Hawke, who's made some very quiet progress. Again, another driver who hasn't really made much noise tonight, but he's up there in 10th position and has benefited from others' mistakes, although he might see Will Rossetti benefit at his expense in a second if he gets through. They're also right behind the recovering Jamie Peters-Ennis, who is back up to 9th place after all the shenanigans up at the chicane, and now he's under attack from both sides. They come down towards the Taylor's hairpin. 3 abreast into the right-hander, and somehow initially Hawker got through. Jamie Peters-Ennis says, let's try again, sunshine. Back up the inside he goes on the undercut, and now look at Will Rossetti squeezing alongside the black and orange car up the hill. I think we're on to possibly the last lap, if not the second to last lap now, as they come up the hill towards the right-hander at Duffus Dip. Last of the late breakers, and Jamie Peters-Ennis has gone off again. He's across onto the grass, onto the gravel. Around it goes. It was all going so well, then the fairy tale ends in a nightmare.
It does, absolutely. But this battle is not over as Hawk has lost it, and that collects Arnell, who was innocently alongside, and Hawk is going to make it back onto the track, but he's going to be slow in a dangerous position there, as I hope Skillicorn can slow it up. He does. So it's all again kicking off on the last couple of laps. I think we're just about to see Christian Chiruta take the victory, though.
It is. He's done it a little bit easier in race one. He stole it on the line in the first race. He's not going to have it stolen away from this time, as he's definitely the race winner by a clear margin. Christian Chiruta does the double in Scotland. He takes both race victories in Knockhill tonight from David Rowe in second place, and Tom McEwing with a hard-fought third place ahead of Andy Parker. Good job from Tom. Fifth place for Steve McMaster, sixth for John Lang, seventh for Blair Mcconaughey, eighth for Paul Donkey, one of his best results in the Caterham's race. Ninth place for Will Rossetti, 10th for Emil Gisellings, and then all the other miscreants behind that have been involved in incidents in the last few laps. And that includes Jason Knight, Paul Hawker, Chris Skillicorn, Jamie Peters-Ennis, who I know he will be absolutely kicking himself after that one. He being as high as sixth position, and then he will be looking back to try and improve next time out at Silverstone Grand Prix. I know he'll definitely be a bit disappointed with himself, but still, to be up there in sixth position is something to be proud of at least, so I hope he's not too downcast by the results of race number 2. 15th for Steve Arnell, 16th for Gallagher, and then Newman and Shepherd, who, sadly, after all his adventures, didn't even make the flag, which is unfortunate. But I think quite a lively second race, and here is the result. And doesn't really tell the whole story, does it? Because there was plenty going on behind from start to finish. Christian Chiruta does win, and he wins from pole position. He had to pass in the early stages and picks up the win by 2.2 seconds from David Rowe, who gets a brace of second places to help his point standings. Third for Tom McEwing, fourth for Andy Parker, fifth for Steve McMaster, then sixth for John Lang, and seventh for Blair Mcconaughey after he started just in the fringes of the top 10 for this second race. Paul Donkin, 8th, Will Rossetti, 9th after he started back in 15th after his contact with Richard Gallagher in race number 1, and then Will Gisellings picks up the final top 10 spot in the second race. 11th goes to Jason Knight, quite a quiet 11th place for him, as it was for Paul Hawker until a couple of laps from the end when it all kicked off. Chris Skillicorn exited stage left at the hairpin and managed to end up 13th. Jamie Peters-Ennis will have wished for more, but he was as high as 6th and should have deserved about 6th position, but sadly bad fortunes put him down to 14th. And then Steve Barnell got caught up in late contact. Richard Gallagher, Jeff Newman, and also Jay Shepherd, who was certainly one of the most entertaining drivers out there tonight, but couldn't translate that into a strong race result, and has to come home in last in that second race. I need to lie down after that. That was 2 very intensive races, 2 of the most intensive we've had for a while in caterhamracer.com, and what a circuit to provide it. Knockhill certainly giving us the goods in terms of a cracking show in both of those events. And I'm pretty certain, I think you probably echo my sentiment here, I hope, is that if that's the sim version, whoever knows what the real version is going to be like, what kind of battles we're going to see next weekend. Yeah,
you can bet that real life imitates the sim world, doesn't it, sometimes? But yeah, it's going to be it's the same tactics, it's the same style of racing. So yeah, absolutely, real life is going to be exactly the same as that. Hopefully we'll have a few less contact issues, but overall I thought they managed that situation quite well, and certainly for David Rowe and Christian tonight, they've both put on good dominant shows, I guess, but Christian coming out on top, the wily as ever, and then just some good Tom McEwen again showing a good thing. So it'd be interesting once all the scores are all totted up as to where everyone sits. But Christian certainly had a night that he's going to enjoy and lord over everyone, I'm sure.
We do need to call Christian Chiruta officially the nickname of the Fox, don't we? Because he is always rather cunning on circuit and manages to pick up the victory and sneak up behind people and take it from them when they least expect it. When he does get into the lead, he's usually very hard to catch. So I think certainly a very cunning driver and someone who is no stranger to Caterham racing. And you also have to wonder that, I wonder if he'll make an appearance back in Caterham in the real world one day after some of the racing he's done. But I'm sure that's a discussion for another day. I think it's time for you to once again don your best Martin Brundle impression, Chris, and go and have a chat Brundle down the virtual pit lane, because I'm pretty sure after 2, I think eventful's quite an understatement, eventful races that we had tonight, there might be, I'd like to think there'll be quite a few drivers with quite a bit to say after that.
Well, let's drag Andrew in here. So Andrew, have you got us in the commentary box?
Hey, how's it going?
So 3rd place in race 1, 4th place in race 2. That's not a bad evening's points, I'd say.
I am chuffed. It's the polar opposite of my usual affair, which is to run 2nd or 3rd for 10 minutes and then bin it. So, yes, chuffed.
And actually you sort of put up with some mid-race pressure there, so you must be pretty happy that you, not only are you, got the speed there, but actually the racing's coming together now as well.
Yeah, thankful for that. It was some really good racing with Tom. He did, I don't know if you guys got it, but a great overtake on me into turn 3. It was dead good. So yeah, enjoyed the racing for sure.
Yep, so we'll look forward to seeing you at the next one. So I think it's Silverstone next up. I'm sure you'll be looking for more of the same.
Yes. Cheers, guys. Thank you very much.
Great stuff. Let's also give Tom McEwing, who got the 3rd place in that second race there. So, and we saw, as Andrew was talking about, the battling there. So Tom, have you got us in the commentary box? I can see your green light. Haven't heard you. I think Tom might be a bit muted, but we'll at this point we'll take it that he enjoyed that. It was good racing, and he had a fabulous time with Andrew racing around there. Sorry, Tom, that we couldn't get the audio
just
going.
The default answer speaking on his behalf, wasn't it?
Yeah. Sorry, we couldn't. I should have put on a different voice, shouldn't I? I wouldn't want to insult him, but he, he's definitely always there or thereabouts, and getting the podium there is a really nice thing. That's a couple of races because he got did he get a podium last time as well? Yes, he did. He got a 2nd place last time out, so that's a really good strong start to his championship. So let's get Mr. Rowe into the commentary box. David, have you got us?
So I do. Can you hear me?
Yes, we have got you. So talk to me about race 1.
My God. Well, I'll talk to you about qualifying. I lucked in completely about 3/10 or 4/10 quicker than what I'm actually capable of doing for that one lap, and then I thought that's brilliant. And then from then I was just I was just trying to back Christian up because he had so much more pace than me. It was embarrassing, really.
But you had a nice protectable gap going into probably the last 2 or 3 laps there, and it just seemed to all happen in the last couple of corners. Christian got a run on you and actually took the win over the line.
Once again, and I'm sure it didn't show up on the live stream, it seems I have a habit of breaking things on the car, and there was plumes of smoke coming out of the back of it in my rear view mirror, which is clearly due to too many down changeover revs, so I need to deal with that. But really, the race was lost through a missed gear change.
There you go. So I saw in one of the qualifier practice races we had before that you actually had a box of neutrals at some point. So clearly heavy on the car, but nevertheless, I would say 2 second places. Pretty happy with that.
I mean, yeah. Going into this, I was never. No, I didn't think I'd be on the podium, so I'm actually extremely happy about that. I'm extremely unhappy about Christian beating me in race 1, especially with missed gear change. But I think you understand that.
Yes, I've gained one, so I shall make sure I remind Christian of that as I drag him into the comment shop. So yeah, we look forward to seeing you next time, and I'll see you this weekend for some next weekend for on-track action.
See you later, guys. Cheers.
Yeah, and let's get Christian in here as well. Hello, Christian, you got us?
Hello.
So again, you're never short of luck, and it seems like even in a sequential box, Dave managed to miss a gear.
Defeat from the jaws of victory, I believe, is the term for Dave.
But it's not the first time we've seen that. I was definitely lucky enough to inherit a...
Let's not dwell on that fact.
But that must be a pretty good feeling coming out that last corner, and I know it's a good feeling coming out that last corner and taking that win from David, and especially as it was David.
Yeah, the fact that it was David just made it all the more deeply satisfying.
And then you backed it up with a second race where actually you looked like you sort of got quite a comfortable gap and was able to protect it most of the race.
Yeah, I think once Dave made that mistake and I got past him, it's such a tricky circuit, and I thought, I just took the approach of slower is faster, and not making the mistakes will allow for the gap. So by not trying too hard, I think that's what ultimately helped in the long run. Yeah,
so that's a really good night for your championship, and say 2 wins can't be much better. Guess you're looking forward to the next one.
Indeed I am.
And Scott had a question earlier about whether you were thinking about returning. We've obviously seen your car out on track a lot, but not you in the driving seat. Is that going to happen in the future? Come back to racing?
Well, we shall see. We have a wedding to pay for and a house to decorate, but other than that, who knows? We shall see what cars are on the market.
annoyingly good to see you back on the grid.
I'm sure you'd love to see me back, Susie. I'm
Just
sure
not.
you'd love to see
I'll
me
retire
back.
by then.
And the good thing is,
I think Chris would agree. Probably just not in a 420R.
Yeah.
Especially he's on the grid with him.
well, the thing is, 420Rs have got a sequential pop, so there's no chance of missing gears there. So, kind of the only option.
I think Christian Cat himself lucky he's not racing next weekend, because otherwise David might just start fiddling with his car now.
Wouldn't put it past him.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, well done tonight, Christian. We'll see you at the next one.
Cheers, guys. Thanks again.
Yeah, Scott. You know, for that, early on in that first race, it felt quite quiet, sedate, and spread out, didn't it? But as Caterhams do, they crammed everything into the last 5 minutes of the first race, and then the second race was just action-packed galore.
Yeah, you're telling me. I think if everyone. I don't know whether it's just it's the summer weather coming in, or it's just the fact that things are starting to slowly get back to normal, or the fact it was just a good race, or we're starting to get into the beginning of the season now. But just even talking with those interviews, there was quite a nice vibe between everyone there in terms of it. So I think everyone's in a good place in terms of the championship and the drivers and everything. So it seems as though we're in quite a nice position, and fingers crossed it carries on in that vogue moving forwards as the season progresses. Of course, we've still got a little while before our next outing for caterhamracer.com, so I'll give you a quick overview once again. Next time the virtual guys will be out once again will be later this month. It will be on the 22nd of June, and it's almost essentially a centerpiece race in many cases, because it is on the Silverstone circuit with not just any layout, it is the full Grand Prix layout, and they will be making the switch from the slowest cars in Caterham Motorsport to the quickest, and it will be the Caterham 420Rs. Now, I have to ask the question, Chris, are we at 2021 spec with these cars yet?
No, we're still sticking with the 2020 at the moment. We the person who needs to do the modding is got a lot on at the moment, so I don't want to put too much pressure on there. It'd be really great to see the 21 car out there, but ultimately this 2020 car gives us some really good racing, so we're going to stick with that while that's still there. But yeah, nice to get the faster car out for the longer track. Silverstone GP is a great track to go and race at, and say only a few weeks away until we've got that one, but we have then got a slightly longer gap from June 22nd through to the 3rd of August until we're at Brands Hatch Indy on the virtual Brands Hatch Indy track on the 3rd of August. It's we might well put on an event in between to sort of break down that gap for our drivers and also the people who like watching.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. And what's always quite intriguing is which drivers can adapt between the Caterham Academy car and the 420R the best, and those who seem to prefer one over the other. Now, let's say Steve McMaster, for example, we know he prefers the 420 over the Academy car, so whether or not going towards Silverstone and then Brands Hatch, he'll perform stronger than he has done the first couple of races, and that's fair. He hasn't performed weak at Donington Park or Knockhill, but whether or not the faster car will play to his advantage with the different handling characteristics, I guess I'll have to wait and see, depending on the circuit. But of course, we've got, just after that, back to the Academy cars. Next time they'll be in these cars is going to be Croft on the 31st of August. And it's 28th of September with another bit of a wait. They're almost a month's time before we get back to Snetterton 300 with the Academy cars. And then we get back to the fast cars of the 420s. And that's towards the middle of October, the final rounds at Cadwell Park, and that's before the official season finale for Caterham Motorsport, which is in the same venue they started the belated season last year at Cadwell Park. And I never really thought Cadwell Park would be a Caterham circuit, but having watched them last year, I've been converted and I've been proved wrong. So
Caterhams make a good effort at any circuit they go to, don't they, Scott? So it doesn't matter what corners you got, we give our best to overtake it pretty much every one of them. So yeah, Caterhams generally have a good time wherever they go.
Not disagree with that. That's why I love them so much. Right, well, that just about wraps things up for tonight. Of course, now remember, once you point out, of course, if you do want to go and watch Caterham racing in real life, of course, then the Caterham Motorsport roster is out next weekend if you happen to be able to travel, or if you're in Scotland and able to be north of the border for it. Knockhill circuit in Fife. Now, I believe, obviously, with the restrictions that are in place now, I think, don't take my word for it, but I think that tickets will be available for sale. The best thing to do is to check with Knockhill circuit and check their website, which will be knockhill.com, and go to the events section to see if there's tickets available for that one. If you want to find out more about Caterham Motorsport, go to caterhamcars.com and head to the motorsport section. If you want to find out more about caterhamracer.com, then head to caterhamracer.com. Go to the website and go to the Facebook page as well. And be sure to hit subscribe as well, and hit the notifications button, because that means then next time we go live at Silverstone, you'll get a little notification in your YouTube inbox that says to you that we've gone live to go forwards. Of course, a bit of a break, but of course we're going to go real racing next time we go out. I'll be making my first ever trip to Knockhill next weekend, which I'm very excited about. One of the very few circuits I haven't ever visited, another one I can tick off my list. Of course, you'll be back in action as well with the 7 UK cars, and I think we're pretty certain, Chris, given the mixed conditions that we had at Donington Park, I'm pretty certain you want it pretty much as dry as possible, giving it at Knockhill. Given that we're going into the summer months now, we might just get that.
Yeah, we've been sort of part of it's been sunny as anything recently, hasn't it? So maybe we will get some sun up in Scotland. We never count on that, but whatever it is, it's sure to be good. Are we live streaming the Knockhill round, Scott?
Yes, I believe we are. That's my main reason for going up there is that for the live stream commentary, I shall be up there on the microphone, so I'll be watching all 5 championships, because it is all 5 that are competing that weekend. We've got Academy, Road Sport, 270, 310s, and 7 UK Championship, and of course you'll be back in action as well. So I think, of course, we have to bear in mind the last time Caterham Motorsport went there was 2018, but that was in the reverse layout. So obviously you've got a slightly new challenge in some cases, Chris, to race with the fastest Caterham in the motorsport roster, but to race it in the opposite direction you competed in 3 years ago.
Yeah, got to learn a whole new track, basically. Even though we're going to the same venue, we've got to learn a whole new track. Blair on screen now, obviously it's one of his local tracks, and he's managed to put in quite a few laps in testing and that, but it's not a track that the southern sort of base drivers generally get to practice ahead of time, but we'll be there from sort of Wednesday, ready for Thursday, Friday testing, and looking after our arms, especially in the 420 with the heavy steering with the slicks on, looking after ourselves for ready to put in three races on over the weekend.
Pretty certain if there's one driver that wants to put him at his local circuit, I think it's got to be the boss man himself, isn't it? Which is Darren Mcdonald, of course, being a proud Scotsman himself. Wouldn't surprise if he and I joke when I say this, of course, I'm joking. Wouldn't surprise if he starts pulling favours to get a home win on that next weekend, but being in 7 UKs. But to be fair, the pace he showed at Donington Park was pretty phenomenal. He was quite up there and getting it in the mix at the front of the filter. He really has taken to this new spec 2021 Caterham very, very quickly. So wouldn't surprise me, given some of his potential local knowledge and the mileage he's got in his car already, he might cause a surprise. And I know that some of the home fans will appreciate him picking up a podium, and I definitely know that if he does pick up a podium, if not a win, he'll be talking about it for the rest of the season. I think he's still talking about his win for Spa a couple of years ago.
Yes, we will never hear the end of it, will we?
Good stuff. Right, I think it is time for us to wrap up now, because we've rambled on long enough about post race, and we need people to go off and enjoy the rest of their summer evening. So once again, a big thank you to everyone who supports caterhamracer.com, not just you who watches, but also our brilliant sponsors. And for the last time, we'll remind you that the caterhamracer.com Season 5 Championship is sponsored by Just Add Lightness, high performance LED lights and accessories for the Caterham 7, like design and display structures. Immerse yourself in worlds beyond with bespoke projection screens, and by DPR Motorsport, your competitive advantage. And we're also supported by Darren, Burke Performance Driver Coach. Make sure you keep on the social channels for Caterham Motorsport and for BRSCC to watch out for the live streams next weekend, to watch Caterham racing in action. Chris, good luck next weekend. Fingers crossed you can pick up some good results. And of course, we'll see you next time for more action, which will be on June 22nd, when the virtual caterers will switch from the Academy to the 420R cars, and they hit the home of British Motorsport and the Grand Prix circuit at Silverstone. But for now, Christian Zaruta's done the double. Can he keep up the momentum heading towards Silverstone? Let's find out. But for myself, Scott, Chris, and everyone at caterhamracer.com, thank you for watching. Thanks for supporting. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye now.